Do you also know that feeling when you just cannot decide? Sometimes image selection can be a nightmare. In this video, I will tell you about my approach of image selection. Photography is all about selection. You choose your location, where do you want to go, you choose the time of year, time of day, you choose your subject, what do you want to photograph. Then if you found your subject and the time of day and the light is right, then you have to choose what your composition, what do you include, what do you exclude in your image. Coming home with a fully stacked memory card, you have to choose which images do you keep, which ones do you delete, which ones are worth to start editing. Then in the editing process again, you have to make various selections how to edit your image. And finally, you have to choose which images are worthy to put up on your website or even print or sell or give out to your client, whatever. You could even call photography selectionography. Sometimes this process can be really easy, but sometimes it can also be an absolute nightmare. The most easiest times I have when I have a clear image, clear vision of an image in advance before I even go on location, sometimes even before I know a location where this image could exist. And if I go out, shoot, come home, and I see my vision packed into an image, then it's an absolute no-brainer for me. It's an image I will keep for sure. I will put on the website, and most of the times, well, always actually, I want to see it printed. Because it's such a nice, good feeling to have your vision. You had an image in your head and then you see it actually on the screen or hold it in your hands. Unfortunately, these kinds of images are quite rare. The normal case is I come back home from a shoot with various images of the same subject, often quite similar, and then the selection process is getting more difficult. First thing I do, I start deleting the images I am sure I don't like. I am pretty ruthless when it comes to deleting images because I think I don't need to keep the crappy ones, and the less good ones that remain, the easier gets the selection process to actually pick out, and easier and quicker to pick out the images I like the most, or that fits the most to my ideas. Then I look at composition and light. Is it a pleasing, balanced composition? Where is my main subject positioned in the frame? How is the distribution between the lights and the shadows? How about the layering of foreground, middle ground, background? And while doing this, I always keep in mind why I did shoot this subject at all, and which of the images add the most to my initial idea or the feeling I had when looking at the scene. When there were changing light conditions, again I try to choose those images with the best light and the light that adds the most to the story or message I want to tell. Next, I check the borders of the frame. Are there any distractions that make my eye wander out of the image? Because I don't want that. I want the focus of the viewer sort of trapped inside the image for as long as possible. Don't get me wrong. I do all these considerations also on location before I press the shutter button. But firstly, I'm not always focused enough, and secondly, I want to benefit from the digital photography and really work a scene and experiment a lot. After that, there's the technical stuff like sharpness, exposure, aperture, and shutter speed. Is it sharp where I want it to be sharp? If I tried different exposure settings, which one is the best to get out most details when editing? Same with aperture for different depths of field and shutter speed for different motion blur effects. And so the wheat is more and more separated from the chaff, and I color mark the images I will edit in Lightroom. After editing, I go over parts of the same process again and finally decide if an image goes up on the website and if I want to print it. While this sounds all well thought out and structured, in reality it's not always the case. Because in the end, it's often not the brain that decides, but the gut feeling. However, this is not a bad thing because I have learned over time that my gut feelings often are cleverer, wiser, and more reliable than my brain. And this does not only apply to photography alone. So if there is an image that speaks to me or touches me somehow, I think it's never wrong to value this, if it does apply to some logical photographic rules or not. Because isn't the main purpose of photography to touch a string in people? One dangerous path I try to avoid at all costs is to start comparing my work to images from other photographers. Because this can be very intimidating and leads to uncertainty and confusion and can make me give good images less value than they actually deserve. I not always manage not to compare, especially when it comes to landscape photography. There's so many incredibly beautiful images out there, and then I think mine just are not on this level. That's probably a reason why I print so few landscape images. But I'm working on it photographically and also mentally. Anyway, enough of the theoretical talk. Let's have a look at some real images. The images of my parking garage shoot. If you haven't seen the video, have a look here or here. Yeah, let's do it. These are the three images I showed in the video. Let's look at the first one. What fascinated me here were these two ramps made out of concrete, exposed concrete, raw concrete, and they sort of look like floating discs. Although heavy concrete, they still look light and floating, and that was what I wanted to show. I did a couple of compositions. Let's have a look and go through my selection process. Let's start with that one. Here I shot just one of the helixes, but the quality of this building are those two helixes. And while one helix alone is sort of interesting to me, yes, I also one can see the floating discs. But why just show one when there are two? Just one helix is clearly not a keeper for me. Then look at this one. Here I have both helixes. Composition-wise, I have sort of a base. It's not ideal, but here we have sort of a base with the lowest ramps. We have finish on top with the roof. But what I don't like here is the symmetric composition. It makes it too static for me. That's one, but the main reason this is not a portfolio image is that one can see the joints here of those ramps. And this sort of takes the magic of the floating discs away, because it's revealed how the ramps are constructed. So this again is no keeper for me. Then the next one, I have both helixes. It's not symmetric. The joints are not visible. But what I don't like here is, although we have sort of a base here, the darker parts, there is no finish on top. The ramps just end or go out of the frame somewhere with no clear finish. Also, one problem is that the brightest part of the image is right along the border here, on the left border. Also, what I don't like is the balance between those two ramps. The left one takes too much space. It's brighter, that makes it more prominent anyway, plus being so much bigger than the second one just makes the image imbalanced to me. So this is not a keeper as well. Then have a look at this one. I don't know why I did not show this image in the video, because I really like that one. What I do like here is the contrast between the curves of the ramps and the hard, edgy edges of the roof. Also, it being tilted sort of gives a nice dynamic. Also makes the negative space of the sky quite interesting or pleasing to the whole composition. I did actually put this up on the website, and I can imagine making a print. What's left are two versions of the same image, one colored and slightly different crop, and the one I showed in the video. This is the image that comes the closest to my idea of showing these floating, heavy concrete discs. We have a base here, composition-wise, also not perfect, but for me it's enough. We have a finish with the roof. The balance between those two ramps is pleasing to me. I did darken the brightest part here on the left, so the eye doesn't want to wander away. With editing, I deliberately made this image less contrasty than I usually do with black and white images, because I think this also adds to the lightness of these discs. So this is a clear keeper for me. I also put it up on the portfolio, but something very important is missing here, and that is a sense of scale. If you have seen the video, you know about the size of these ramps, you know what it is, but if you have no idea what location this is actually more of an abstract image than an architecture image. Imagine having a person stand somewhere here looking down the ramps. This would make a big difference. This would make it from an abstract image to an actual architecture image. And having a sense of scale would make this an immediate print for me. But it's a big part missing. So I like the image, it's balanced, I like the composition, I like that my idea is actually reality here, one can see it, or I can see it, don't know how about you. So it's a portfolio of website for sure, but for the print, sense of scale is missing. I actually did put the colored version on the website because I think the quality of the side light is even more visible in the colored one. Also, the warm tone makes it even more light than the black and white version. Okay. Off to the next one. Getting close under the ramp and looking up opened up completely new and interesting perspectives. Here on the side of the ramps, this view gave me a sense of space like in the aisle of a cathedral. And that's what I wanted to capture in an image. Again, I did a couple of different compositions. Let's start with this one. I went horizontal orientation first, but here this is, look at this, I cut off the edge of this passage here, which makes it immediately a non-keeper for me. It was quite sloppy positioning of tripod and camera. By the way, I've been asked several times in the comments why I use a tripod even in the brightest daylight. And one of the reasons is that using a tripod forces me to slow down and gives me time to think about what I really want and how to best achieve it, rather than running around and like a headless chicken shooting everything that moves or stands still. So I didn't keep, but I tried better with this one. But this sense of space of a cathedral mainly comes from the vast vertical space you have. So horizontal orientation didn't really fit my idea. Also, having this opening here right in the corner is a major distraction. So this one's a clear non-keeper again. Then we have the same image, one's black and white and one's colored. I will talk about the black and white I showed in the video. By going vertical, my idea of this cathedral was accomplished the best. I really like the composition here, having a base, having the side walls. I like the light coming in from the side, like through the cathedral's windows. I like these openings, like passages to the main nave of the cathedral. There even is some heavenly light coming down from above into this space, which on one hand I like, on the other hand it's the main reason this is not a print for me. Because when I look into this space, first my eye wants to rest here, but is always drawn up to the brightest part, and the eye wants to get out of the image. And this is what I don't like. Because this stripe of light is completely blown out, darkening in post-production doesn't really help, because it will stay white, or if I darken it big time, it's getting a dull gray. It was a really tough call for this one, because I really like this image a lot, but the fact that my eye is drawn out of the image made this a non-print for me. I did put up the colored version on the website, because at that moment I liked it more, but on one day I liked the black and white more, on the other day I liked the colored version more. In the end it doesn't really matter. And now to the image I absolutely love. Looking up between those ramps also gave me a sense of space, but not like in a cathedral, but more like in a tent. Also with the shapes of the ramps, it does really look like a tent, but a heavy-duty concrete tent. I tried different compositions as well. Let's start with this one. Going vertical, while I do like to put the main subject in the lower part of vertical oriented images, here the space of the tent is too much cramped to the bottom. Also I have this area here takes too much space and is also too bright, is drawing the eye out of the frame again. So this is not a keeper for me. The next two images we have to compare side by side to analyze them. In the image on the left, I went close to the wall, which gives me a baseline on the bottom going from border to border, which I do like. What I don't like is, again, this space here. The lowest ramps, there's just too much space in the frame. Also, what I don't like is with this little shift of position from the camera, This gives not a completely different perspective, but a different perspective. And this makes the tent heavier than I want it to be. It sort of gives me an uneasy feeling. While on the right, by having a little bit more distance to this wall, it's much more calm, and it gives this feeling of coziness you have in a tent, or I have at least in a tent, which this one I think does less at least. Also, the distribution of lights and shadow is more pleasing in the image on the right. But the baseline here is broken. It's not going from border to border. That's something I like less on the image on the right. But all in all, also with these ramps taking up less space, I went for the one on the right. The symmetrical composition, distribution of lights and shadows, the idea of tent that gets through the most with this image, then the bright parts of the images in the center, which keeps the eye locked inside the frame. All this makes this a clear print for me. And this is an image that somehow speaks to me, it touches me. I love this image, so I had to print it. I did put the colored version on the website because the touch of warm light, I mean, it's almost monochromatic, also the colored version, but this touch of warm light gives more a feeling of coziness like in a tent. And that's why in the end I decided to put up the colored version. And to round it off, here are a couple of more experimental images. This one was shot from the top level downwards. This one a real very abstract image, which I like too. And I think about adding it to the parking garage series on the website. This again, the tent situation slightly tilted. And here again, the tent one, but really abstract. But I sort of like this one too. So do you have a similar approach to image selection, or are you doing it completely different? Let me know in the comments. I hope you can take something away from this video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.